Welcome to Civitas LA, where we feature diverse and emerging leaders who make up this dynamic region and are creating community every day and building a better tomorrow. For nearly 40 years, the Downtown Breakfast Club has served to recognize, foster, and encourage the orderly and planned growth of downtown Los Angeles. This group consists of individual representatives from all major sectors, including real estate, banking, international investment, architects and engineers, urban planners, investment brokers, insurance development organizations, and governmental agencies. Their collective goal? To encourage and support sound principles for developing a better quality of life for downtown Los Angeles. One of the Downtown Breakfast Club's signature events, Roses and Lemon Annual Breakfast, brings together civic leaders to celebrate the highlights, roses, and the lowlights, the lemon, in downtown's evolution. Always a fun event on the civic calendar for Los Angeles. And certainly, no one has had more of a front row seat to downtown's evolution than Hal Bastian, known himself as Mr. Downtown. And we are grateful to have Hal with us this morning as we explore the fits and starts of downtown Los Angeles' evolution. Hal, welcome to Civitas LA.
Hey, Dwayne. Thanks for having me.
Hal, we greatly appreciate you being here. This is a great kickoff to a multi-part series where we focus on downtown Los Angeles, and certainly, no subregion within our city has had such a transformation in such a shorter period of time as downtown. So we are grateful to have you with us. Hal, share with our audience, who are you? Share with us your journey from wherever you wish to start to today.
Well, let's see if we'll just do a little thumbnail of my life. I was born at Queen of Angels Hospital just outside of downtown Los Angeles. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, only child. Went to Granada Hills High School, was drum major of the marching band at Granada Hills High School. In my year, we worked hard and we became the All-City champions. A guy named John Elway was our quarterback, so we won all of our football games too. I was the first kid in my family to go to college. Went to school at UCLA, poli-sci major. Went directly to law school, and realized after I got there that, I wasn't really sure I wanted to be a lawyer. So I did something that was very hard, which is I dropped out of law school, and I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't have a job at IBM or Xerox. So I thought, I'll become a bartender. And when I'm a bartender, I'm going to meet people from a diverse background of doing all kinds of different things, and I'll meet someone that will turn me on to a profession. And that's exactly what happened. I met somebody involved in commercial real estate. Started as an office space broker in 1983 at Julian J. Studley, Inc. There was such a man as Julian J. Studley, who recently passed away. In 1994, I got recruited by Cushman & Wakefield, a big commercial real estate brokerage firm, to move downtown to do retail leasing of something called the Broadway Plaza, which we now know is the Block. And before that, we called it Macy's Plaza. So repositioned that center. Not an easy thing to do. Downtown was not a popular place to be. And in the year 2000, I left corporate America to become the leasing agent on the first adaptive reuse conversion of old office buildings into residential loft-style apartments done by Tom Gilmore. So I did that from 2000 to 2001, and then I got a call from a lady named Carol Schatz, who's a big leader in downtown Los Angeles, now retired, but she ran the Central City Association, which is a business advocacy group, as well as the Downtown Center Business Improvement District, which is a special property tax assessment district. It's a nonprofit, and its mission is to keep the downtown clean and safe. It's really a private government. It does what government should do, like pick up trash, make people feel secure.
Sure.
But the government doesn't have the money to do that. So business improvement districts are funded by the property owners, and there's over 8 of them in downtown now. And I got a call from Carol, and she said you've been doing a great job at the Old Bank District and getting people to move downtown, and we'd like you to come over to the Business Improvement District and help us do it over and over again. So I was with Carol for almost 13 years, from the end of 2001 till 2014, to the fall of 2014. And while I was there, I became the salesman of downtown. And I helped to recruit over 300 restaurants, bars, nightclubs, Bottega Louis, Ralph's, Whole Foods, every crane you've seen in the sky. I got to get people confident to do that. And then back in 2014, I left the BID and became a commercial real estate broker again and a consultant, and I'm still helping to build the Downtown Renaissance. So that's about as fast as I can cover 60 years.
Well, that's a lot of ground to cover for sure. But let's back up just a little bit and set the scene for our audience, particularly those who are not as familiar with downtown or those who are international listeners. When did you first become involved in downtown, first of all, and set the scene? What were the circumstances in downtown that you saw at that time?
Well, here's even the broader background than that question, which is until the 1950s, downtown was the center of everything. It was the center of business, it was the center of retail, it was certainly the center of government and banking and all those things. In 1924, 100,000 people lived in downtown Los Angeles. But after World War II, we started to suburbanize the area, and we were moving away from the city. We started making places like Century City and Woodland Hills. And downtown lost its luster, and it really had a difficult path. And when I got to downtown in 1994, nobody wanted to be in downtown. Downtown was, not a place that you wanted to be, and the population was 18,000 people, down from 100,000 people in 1924.
Well, I remember when I, moved to Los Angeles and joined the Los Angeles Economic Development Corporation and was covering downtown and working with you on downtown issues. I recall this was 2004-ish. The population was around 19,000 at that point in a city of 3.5 million, 3.6 million. Certainly, what was the opportunity that you saw, that Carol saw, that the Downtown BID and CCA and others saw in downtown at that point in time?
Well, actually, we all just went batshit crazy. We just knew that we were underutilizing our city center, and every other city in America had a vibrant downtown, and we did not. And a number of us, including Carol, and Carol was one of the primary leaders, and then I got to be one as well. We just decided that we could bring downtown back. We were crazy, and we did. And the number one thing that helped us do that is we realized that we really needed to fill up these old empty office buildings. Until 1965, the tallest commercial office building in downtown LA was 13 stories. We were a low-rise city. We were a low-rise city for a lot of reasons. One was land economics. We didn't have to go vertically. Two was cultural. We didn't want to have concrete canyons. And the third thing is we have big earthquakes every once in a while. But under Mayor Tom Bradley, we started redeveloping Bunker Hill, and all those tenants in those 13-story buildings went to the new downtown. And the old downtown was vacated for the better part of 40 years. And so Carol Schatz looked around America and said, what are other cities doing with their functionally obsolete old office buildings? And every other city in America was converting them into housing. But we had a problem. Our land use zoning did not allow for the conversion of a commercially zoned office building into residential. So Carol got everybody in the room from the city and the community and said, let's change the law. So in 1999, the adaptive reuse ordinance was passed, which allowed for the conversion of the old office buildings into residential. Didn't give up any of the commercial zoning, it kind of just added a layer of residential to it. And then Tom Gilmore was the first developer to take advantage of it. And so that was kind of the story arc of how things really started to get going.
And was there any pushback to that ordinance, or was it all accepted by the city? Sometimes it's difficult to get city bureaucracy to get to a yes. How difficult was it getting the city to a yes in that regard?
Well, it was about a 2 or 3 year process, to go through and get everybody to coordinate. The real secret behind adaptive reuse, it allows you as a developer to buy a building and know for sure that you can convert it. So it creates certainty. Whereas when you see high-rise buildings with cranes and things like that, there's many years of entitlements to get the approval from the city to do those things. So it was not an easy process, but the secret sauce behind adaptive reuse is it didn't require any hard cash dollars from the city. What it did require is coordination amongst the various agencies that control development, which are over 20, by the way, and to make it easier to do. And so it was a great public policy in which there was an incentive to build because you could do it faster without any public money.
Sure, and you said that was 1999, correct? Right. And I believe that's also the year that that Staples Center came about in downtown Los Angeles, moving the LA Lakers and the Clippers to downtown Los Angeles. So so you've got a public policy in place, which is great. You've got the Lakers and Clippers now coming to Staples Center in downtown Los Angeles, and you've got this organization called the Downtown Center Business Improvement District. I know you instituted a number of programs, that were painstakingly intentional in terms of raising awareness, generating eyeballs on downtown. Share some of that work that you all did, whether it was the trips to the East Coast or trips to wherever, to get people investing in downtown and considering downtown as a place to live, work, and invest.
What I realize now, Dwayne, is at the end of the day, I'm a storyteller. And I'm somebody who tells stories to people to convince them to get into the pool because the water is fine, and the pool is downtown Los Angeles. So what I realized when I joined the Downtown Center Business Improvement District, which we call the DCBID for short, is we needed to educate the public about the opportunities and the changing of downtown. Because for decades, downtown was seen as a place you didn't want to be. It was perceived as unsafe and dirty, and it's just not a good reputation. So what we were working to do was to change that reputation. And since we had started doing this residential work, we wanted to let people know that downtown, which was not known for being, a residential or a series of residential neighborhoods, was actually a place that you could live. So I created a housing tour on Saturdays. My joke is I had nothing better to do on Saturdays. So I created a housing tour. It was a 3-hour experience, which ended up being 4 hours because we had so much to show. But the idea is people would register on the DCBID website, which is, by the way, downtownla.com, and they would register to come and do a free tour on a Saturday morning. So we met at Bottega Louie at 7th and Grand, and I gave them an overview of the city. We got on buses and we visited between 5 to 6 new developments that were coming to market. Some of them were adaptive reuse conversion of buildings, some of them were new construction. And while we were going through the various neighborhoods of downtown, and by the way, people tend to talk about downtown as a place, and it's not. It's 16 different neighborhoods with sub-neighborhoods. During the course of moving about with our 50 people, by the way, I did that twice a month on Saturdays for over 12 years. And I probably had more influence on getting more people to move downtown than anybody else. And so by the end of the tour, they understood the neighborhoods of downtown. They understood where there was bars and restaurants that we were also starting to recruit to open up, where the Ralph's grocery store was. So what happened on the Saturday housing bus tour is that people got exposed to downtown and they became experts and they understood where things were. And so that's what we did, and it was magical.
Right. Well, I know also there had been the trips to New York, actually, because I remember when I first joined the LADC, I was invited to join the CCA on their annual trip to New York, where there were presentations to the investment community. Talk about the New York trips and the success of those.
Sure. So as I have been mentioning, downtown was not perceived as a place that anybody wanted to invest money, not the least of which was the capital markets in New York City. So the Lehman Brothers and the JB Morgan Chases, they didn't want to invest money to build things in downtown, and they didn't want to lend money to developers to build things. So Carol was on the phone with Eli Broad, our large downtown benefactor and billionaire, and was saying, what can we do to help change this negative perception that people have of downtown LA in New York? And they came up with this idea of doing a roadshow to take our story to New York and literally get on a plane. And we produced a breakfast at the Plaza Hotel in New York City in November of 2002. We had a talking head panel. So Mr. Broad talked about the importance of culture in downtown Los Angeles. John Cushman III talked about real estate. Tim Lewicki talked about the success of the opening of Staples Center and the coming of LA Live and all that, the hotel as well as the restaurants. And Jan Perry, who was our local elected, was on that panel as well. So we went and we told our story to those investment bankers one morning in a chilly November day, and it worked. And in fact, the next year I was at a meeting and somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, Hal, I met you in New York City at the Plaza Hotel." And I said, "Well, did that presentation have something to do with this $40 million equity investment you're making into this project?" And he said, "Yeah, that's where it began." And I just wish I had had a percentage point on that deal.
Well, so you're convincing capital to come into downtown. You're doing all the legwork, literally legwork by doing these walking tours, getting folks from the region to consider living in downtown and investors in downtown. So what were some of the game changers along the way where you started picking up steam, where you started getting traction?
Okay. Well, the biggest game changer that we had was getting a grocery store to open in downtown LA, because we realized if we were going to have viable residential neighborhoods in downtown, we had to have the same amenities and services that people had in Brentwood or Northridge or Granada Hills. So we approached Ralph's to ask them to open a store in downtown LA. And interestingly enough, Mr. Ralph's opened his first store in 1873 at the corner of 6th and Spring. And the last Ralph's closed in downtown in 1949 or thereabouts, where the Wilshire Grand Hotel got built and the current Wilshire Grand high-rise sits. And they had no interest whatsoever in coming to downtown LA because they had the same negative perception. And they looked at the demographics and they thought that they were too low, but it didn't take into account all the new people we had been recruiting since the last census. So we did original economic research, and we started showing how many people were moving downtown and their affluence, et cetera. Anyway, at the end of the day, they believed us, and they ended up opening up Ralph's Fresh Fare on 9th Street, north side of 9th Street, between Hope and Flower. And right out of the gates, I should say, they were doing $1 million a week.
I was, as a New Yorker originally, and at this point fairly new-ish to Los Angeles and my work in the economic development world and working with you, I was sort of mesmerized by the whole process of trying to get a grocery store into downtown and how these local grocery stores did not believe in downtown Los Angeles at all. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, it was crazy. And my joke is if I had a ring, they would have kissed it. And then later on, we recruited Whole Foods as well and did that, and also Smart and Final. Our only holy grail that we haven't done yet is Trader Joe's, and we'll get them. So that was a very important turning point. In fact, after that Ralph's opened, anytime I did a tour of downtown, I did a lot of tours, both walking tours, as well as putting people in my car and sometimes in buses if they were larger equity groups and things like that. The first place that I would stop is at the Ralph's, because it was open from 5 a.m. till 2 a.m. No matter what time I did the tour, at 8 in the morning, 10 in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that store was full. It was full of people who were in lines. And they're like, oh my God, this isn't just some, booster that's, yakking at us. This
is real.
It's real.
This is real.
And it became important. In fact, that Ralph's grocery store is in the top 5 stores in Kroger nationwide in terms of per square foot sales.
Wow. So Hal, certainly, with Ralph's coming on board and your work in terms of generating awareness, now you're starting to see increased residential living in downtown Los Angeles. Along the way, you instituted a number of programs and initiatives to build community and to allow new residents to find each other. Can you speak to some of those initiatives?
Sure. So, Dwayne, when we did the Old Bank District, we had 3 historic buildings with 230 units, and the neighborhood was rough, to say the least. And we're like, well, how are we going to lease these 230 units? And I'm like, well, maybe we should have thought about that before we spent $33 million. And I had this idea that I think was really divinely inspired, which was this. It's hard to be a renter and have a dog in the city of LA. Landlords are concerned about pee and poop and wear and tear. And we had concrete floors we did sealed with epoxy. So I said, let's be pet friendly, dogs and cats, and iguanas for that matter. And we did it, and it was magical. I had a golden retriever named Buddy who came to work with me every day, and I leased 230 apartments to 350 people with 150 dogs. And when I was at the Old Bank District, I spent a lot of my time with developers and architects and bankers, and I told them how dogs created community, because when people were walking their dogs, they would talk to each other who otherwise never would have talked to one another.
Absolutely.
And so that's why downtown LA is so dog friendly, and it's created community. The cathedral had a big plaza, and the Monsignor Kostelnik had a dog tune, and the plaza was designed for all people, not just Catholics. So we were brainstorming about what could we do to raise awareness for all these new residents that they could come to the cathedral, even if they weren't Catholic, to enjoy the plaza. And I said, I know, let's have a dog day. Let's have everybody bring their dogs. And so we did that. And this year it was put off again. They've moved it now from the cathedral down to Brookfield at Fig at 7. But that was a way for people to get together and meet each other, and for local downtown businesses that cater to animals to promote their business. And then people started having babies in downtown. And they would have babies who got, to be 3 and 4 years old, and they couldn't go door to door trick or treating. So I said, let's create a festival. So at Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising at Hope and 9th Street, it's a beautiful park, and we created doors that kids could go up to and knock on in their costume, and then a volunteer would open it and say trick or treat. And it got more complex over the years. And then clearly, outreach through the website and things like that, of community events, movie nights, all kinds of different things. Because it's one thing to move people into buildings, it's another thing to build community.
No, that's great. We appreciate that. Tell me about the impact of LA Live and the development of that project in downtown.
Well, I'll tell you, the opening of Staples Center and LA Live are really critically important. So both of them were catalytic, projects. In fact, when we talk about the downtown, renaissance, we really talk about a number of things happening at the same time. One was the catalytic projects that included Staples Center and LA Live. The other was the establishments of, the business improvement districts that helped to coordinate and do things. Another one was political advocacy of people like Carol and me and Eli Broad going to New York and promoting the area. So those were all important. So the LA Live component gave mostly a food-oriented based, a lot of restaurants there, and people that hadn't been downtown in 20 or 30 years started to coming to Laker games when Staples Center opened and other events, but then they tended to go home. They would come and they would go, but then they would start, poking around and seeing what was happening. And a critical component of my work was helping to create and recruit more restaurants, because we were not, a cornucopia of restaurants. So the restaurants that came to LA Live were, critically important to getting people to come downtown. And then they started looking around into the other neighborhoods of downtown, other neighborhoods that I've been mentioning. And our biggest catalytic restaurant was in 2007. It's called Bottega Louie. And it's at the southeast corner of 7th and Grand. And Bottega Louie was looking around all of Southern California as a place to do this restaurant. They were looking at West Hollywood and Beverly Hills and downtown. So they came to my office. They were represented by a broker that I worked with at Julian Studley. And at the end of this dialogue, I said, well, listen, your concept belongs in downtown LA, which is not too surprising for the salesman of downtown. It belongs on 7th Street because I'm creating a restaurant row on 7th Street. And it belongs at the southeast corner of 7th and Grand in the old Brooks Brothers space. And that's where it is today. And that was just critically important, because once that happened, the restaurant scene really started to take off.
Well, I recall Bottega Louie greatly because I was at the LA EDC at the time, and I remember speaking to them after they spoke to you, and they said, we talked to this guy, Hal Bastian, he's very salesy. What do you think? And of course, I'm a little bit more cerebral, shall we say. And I said, wow, 10,000 square foot restaurant at 7th and Grand? That sounds pretty bold to me, but that they've been a huge success, and we applaud all that they've done to downtown Los Angeles and the work that you've done, particularly on 7th Street, which is just a great corridor. Along the way, we talked about public policy. We talked about the promotional work that you did both in New York and within this region. But along the way, there was this active and engaged group of downtown civic leaders called the Downtown Breakfast Club. So, here we have these civic leaders who are forging public policy forward, but also celebrating successes, and then also pointing up some lemons along the way. So I know that the annual breakfast was always a great celebration of successful projects that were moving forward, and there was always a lemon awarded to that project that, shall we say, we're not going to call it a dud, but certainly what would could be improved upon, shall we say. I know you're a prominent member of the Breakfast Club, so tell the audience about the Downtown Breakfast Club, first of all, and about this great award event called the Roses and Lemon Breakfast.
Yeah, so the Downtown Breakfast Club has been around for over 40 years, and it's a group of downtown leaders who believe in downtown, and our mission is to help create a better downtown. And we tend to be from various aspects of the real estate industries, so from brokerage to development to architecture. And many years ago, we started something called the Roses and Lemon Awards Breakfast at the Millennium Biltmore Hotel, and it's for about 400 people. And the purpose is to laud things that are terrific about downtown that have happened in the last year. So it could be a new restaurant, a new hotel, a new office building that's opened, a new idea. And so we give out, there's a number of nominees, and we give out a Rose Award to one of them. And then we identify something we call the lemon. And the lemon is something that sucks in downtown during the last year, and something that just is bad that needs improving. And the real purpose of the Lemon Award is to shame people into change in hopefully a somewhat humorous way. And sometimes we're able to, rehabilitate and redeem the lemons, and sometimes they, just get more sour. So
share with us some of the highlights of the great roses awarded over the last number of years.
Oh gosh, well, I always like the restaurant component of it.
And that's an easy category because downtown is just off the charts in terms of quality food right now.
Well, it's an overnight wonder that I've been working on for 25 years. So yeah, you hit that tipping point where you kind of start noticing it, which happened many years ago. But Bastian was a big rose. Rosa Blue more recently was a restaurant that we recognized. Clayton's Public House over on Spring Street, Officina Barrera over on 7. So those are some of the awards that went to great restaurants. The Lemon over the last number of years have included things like the Music Center. There was, right across from the Walt Disney Concert Hall, the south side of the Dorothy Chandler looked like a junkyard. It had sets and it had props, and it was just really junky looking, right? Right across from the Walt Disney Concert Hall, a world-class piece of architecture.
Sure.
So we called them out on it, and the next day, it was all gone.
Oh, interesting.
The next day, Howard Sherman, who's the COO, heard about it, and he cleaned it up immediately. And we just love Howard Sherman because he was the best redemption for the lemon in the history of the awards.
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that the lemon has also gone to that Los Angeles mall, and nothing has happened there over the last decade or more. So tell me about the Los Angeles mall.
Well, it's kitty corner from City Hall, and it's just something that just needs to be
bulldozed?
Well, actually, it has parking underneath it, so we want to rip out everything that's existing above the parking and start over again. Because that area of downtown, the Civic Center, is underserved by any kind of restaurants, whether it's a sit-down restaurant or whether it's a takeaway restaurant, and certainly retail. I mean, there's not a place to go buy a box of Band-Aids. So that's what's happening there. So some of the other lemons over the years is we've been a victim of our own success in downtown in terms of traffic and congestion. And so we'll have a political protest, a major street shut down for a crane that's building a building, and all kinds of things, and a lack of coordinated effort among the city family to kind of control what's happening. And it's dangerous because if people start having bad experiences, in downtown, then all the work we've done is kind of bad. So that's actually gotten better. So we're happy about that. And one of our most famous was Angel's Flight. Angel's Flight was out of service for many years, and we used to pick on it.
And share how quickly, share for our audience not familiar with Los Angeles, Angel's Flight, what it is, where it is.
Thank you. It's a funicular, which means it's a little railway that goes up the side of a very steep hill called Bunker Hill. Originally, Bunker Hill was residential, and it was very affluent. It's where the rich people lived. And they had a funicular that would take them 300 feet down the very steep hillside. It was built in 1901. And it was out of service. There's a long story behind it. But it was out of service for a long time. And we used to pick on Angel's Flight because we wanted to get it running again. So when I was with Carol at the Business Improvement District, I couldn't serve on board of directors because I had a conflict of interest. We had so many constituencies. But when I went out on my own, John Wellborn, who was the head of Angel's Flight, said, "Hey, man, you're so smart. Why don't you come and help us get it running again?" And so I got onto the board of directors. I became its president, and with the help of John and Adele Yellen and Niall Leslie, we were able to get Angel's Flight running again in August of 2017. And it's an iconic iconic part of Los Angeles history, and it creates literally millions of great memories.
That's great, Hal. Thank you. Earlier, you referenced, the tours that you did of downtown and to educate people on the distinct neighborhoods of downtown because they are very different. And for our audience, certainly, downtown's roughly, 5 or so square miles. Give our audience a quick walking tour of the distinct neighborhoods of downtown and what are some of the unique characteristics that you like about them or don't like about them?
Well, there's a lot, so let's see if we can go through it. Starting kind of at the top of downtown, if you will, next to the 101 freeway is the Civic Center, which is our government center for our city, our county, our federal and our state governments. In fact, we have more government employees in downtown Los Angeles than any place except Washington, D.C. Bunker Hill is a high-rise area, which is office space primarily, and then moving down south of Bunker Hill is what we call the financial district, and which includes the library and kind of the flatter areas of downtown. Then starting from 8th Street down to the 10 freeway is an area called South Park. And if you go east of that, there's a historic downtown, there's the fashion district, and going north of that is Broadway, which is the sub-district, and then Little Tokyo and the Arts District. So those are just some of the ones to iterate. There's also a warehouse district and a jewelry district and other things. And in terms of what I like or don't like about them.
Or which ones do you? Well, I guess we should not put you in that position, perhaps. But
it'd be like telling which one of your kids is your least favorite. So here's what I'll tell you, is that I love all the neighborhoods of downtown for different reasons, and they have very different characters. So I call South Park is really the Beverly Hills of downtown, which means it's all new construction. It's from the ground up, and everybody that lives there seems to be pretty. Spring Street tends to be more kind of artistic and kind of cutting edge, and so that's what Spring Street is like. The Arts District I call suburban urban because you have to walk a ways to get into Bunker Hill, the financial district, or even Spring Street, and it's got a great view of the downtown skyline. So they're all different, and they all have very, very different characters in terms of the people who live there and what they like and what they don't like. But I happen to like all of them for different reasons.
Well, there certainly is something for everyone in downtown Los Angeles these days. Curious you talked about South Park and it's all new construction. So years ago, there were, lone believers like Tom Gilmore who believed in the old bank district. Then you talked about, New York capital coming in. Clearly the last, number of years we've seen foreign money moving in, particularly into South Park. Can you talk about the role of foreign investment in downtown Los Angeles, good, bad, and different, and do you see that continuing?
Yeah, the primary money that's been coming into Los Angeles for the last decade has been from China. And there's been projects including Metropolis, which are 4 towers that are adjacent to the Harbor Freeway. They are completed. There's the Hotel Indigo, and then there's 3 condominium towers. Those are completed and they're have opened. That's one major Chinese project, which is mostly sovereign Chinese money. I mean, it's the government of China. And then there's a very large project across from Staples Center. So it's on the east side of Figueroa, and it's stalled out at the moment. When President Trump started kind of like playing hardball with the Chinese were not too happy with it. So they discontinued funding on building their own building, which seems like cutting off your nose to spite your face. But it's had a lot of challenges, and a lot of people, over $50 million of contracts were not paid by the developer, which is called Oceanwide. And it's problematic because we have these hulking structures sitting uncompleted in a very important area for us. But there's something that I can tell you, which is those projects will be sealed up and they will be completed. They can't stay that way forever. But the Chinese have been the most involved. And then there was another group who's going to be developing where the Lux Hotel is and around there. But that's actually stalled out now just because of the world economy.
So, we will get through this period of COVID-19, and, we believe that Los Angeles will continue to be, a major attractor of economic activity and investment. What do you see downtown looking like in another, 10 years, 15 years?
Well, I think we're going to continue building on our density. There are a lot of people right now that are talking about, people don't want to live in a building with an elevator and being on the elevator with other people, and they're moving to the suburbs, and it's the end of downtown as we know it, and oh my God. And here's what I can tell you. One of the worst community outbreaks of COVID was in like White Plains, New York, which is suburban as it gets. So you can't escape a disease anywhere. One of the things that's a challenge for everyone is not creating public policies and being reactive when we don't know what the whole story is going to be. But what we do know about COVID-19 is the world has changed, and it's changed in a significant way, in a sea change. So for instance, U.S. Bank Tower, right, it's an office building. It's got a great restaurant up at the top and an observation deck. Might it be possible, since some of those tenants will not want to renew in that tower, to turn part of that tower into residential? And I think the answer is yes. Our biggest issue in California and certainly Los Angeles is lack of housing. And one of the reasons there's a lack of housing is it's so damn difficult to build here. So we're going to see that. We're going to see a lot of retail that's on the ground floor of buildings. We're going to see that converting so that some of those people that don't want to be on the elevator, those office users, are going to now move into that retail space on 7th Street. That's what you're going to see happen. And we're going to have to bring in light from the street and light up the inner parts of that, and we maybe have virtual windows with TV screens with closed-circuit TV cameras looking over Los Angeles, things like that.
Well, I'm hoping the public policy environment adjusts as well as this new reality, for sure.
Right. But to tell you what I think in 10 years, we were at 18,000 people 20 years ago. We're at 83,000 people today, and we're going to go, I would say in 10 years' time, we're going to, I don't know, I think we could go to 150,000 people. I don't think that downtown is dead in terms of housing, especially if we can provide more affordable housing.
Sure. No, Hal, that's great. This has been a great conversation, and we're really excited to gain your insights and expertise on this important region of Los Angeles. We certainly applaud your leadership over a sustained period of time in building community, and certainly, recognize the role that you have played in forging a path forward for downtown Los Angeles as one of Los Angeles's most thriving subregions. So Hal, that's great. This has been a great conversation, and we're really excited to gain your insights and expertise, and certainly applaud your leadership in driving downtown Los Angeles forward. Clearly, the future of Los Angeles, it's very much going to be tied to a thriving downtown urban core. Before we leave this conversation, however, we always end with a lightning round where we get to know about you and your Los Angeles, or in this case, could be your downtown Los Angeles, since I know you live in downtown Los Angeles. So there are no right or wrong answers, just quick round of questions. Where are you from originally?
I was born at Queen of Angels Hospital, a mile and a half from City Hall.
Which neighborhood do you live in currently?
I live 2 blocks south of City Hall at 3rd and Spring.
Uber, Lyft, yellow cab, bike, bus, walk, metro, or scooter?
All the above.
Netflix, Amazon, Disney Plus, or Hulu?
Netflix.
Favorite LA restaurant or favorite downtown LA restaurant or two?
Bottega Louie and LA Prime on the top of the Bonaventura Hotel.
Favorite spot to take a visitor to Los Angeles?
Angels Flight.
Angels Flight. Lakers or Clippers?
Lakers.
Rams, Chargers?
Rams.
Favorite park in Los Angeles or downtown Los Angeles?
Grand Park.
Bruins or Trojans?
I'm a Bruin.
Okay. Hal, this has been great. We really appreciate your time, and we appreciate all of your service to downtown Los Angeles and to the city of Los Angeles. Hopefully we can have you on again and discuss the progress that you're making and the progress that downtown continues to make. Thank you for joining us this morning. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this program, and we hope you'll join us next week as we look forward to another great conversation. Please don't forget to visit our website at www.civitasla.com and rate and review our show. And until we meet again, stay strong and get involved. To learn more about Civitas LA and share feedback on this program, or if you have a recommendation about future programs, please visit our website at www.civitasla.com. And we hope you'll connect with us on social media, on Facebook at CivitasLA, Instagram at Civitas_LA, and Twitter at Civitas_LA.